So Abraham Lincoln, we're going to be looking at him tonight, and he's really actually an important figure not only in Civil War history, but just in American history in general. Movie came out last year that won all kinds of Academy Awards, big awards, that was about Abraham Lincoln's life. So if you have your parents' permission, my suggestion would be to try to sit down and watch it. It really looks at the Emancipation Proclamation and gives a good view of how Abraham Lincoln kind of looked at this issue of slavery that was going on during the Civil War. So if you have a chance, take a chance to watch it. So Abraham Lincoln's early years, he was born February 12th, 1809. We all know the story of Abraham Lincoln living in the log cabin. He was actually born in Kentucky, though of course you hear him claimed from Indiana. He was the son of Thomas and Nancy Lincoln. Moved to Indiana when he was 7, so he did spend most of his life in Indiana despite the fact he was born in Kentucky. So his mom died in 1818 from milk sickness. This was a big deal for Abraham Lincoln as a young child. His father remarried again to Sarah Johnson. So one of the unique things about Abraham Lincoln is you always picture him with like an axe, chopping down a tree, being outside. And although he was encouraged by his fathers to be, an avid outdoorsman, he actually really enjoyed reading. And he would borrow books from his neighbors all the time and spend a lot of time inside reading. His father really did not like that. He thought that Abraham Lincoln was not working hard enough, so it caused a lot of problems between the two of them. But of course, we know that all of that reading led Abraham Lincoln to be one of the greatest speechwriters and speech givers of all time. So he moved again in 1830 to New Salem, Illinois, and when he was there, he worked several different jobs. He kind of did random jobs, ran errands for people, worked for the post office for a little while. And through all of those jobs, he got to know a lot of people in his community. And in that community, he became known as Honest Abe. So he entered politics in 1832. And his main goal was to serve the state of Illinois. So his first run was in 1832. It was not a very good campaign. He was kind of new and awkward. So he was unsuccessful when he ran for state legislature. He ran again in 1834, 1836, 1838, 1840, and then became a state legislature. So he did not have immediate success, though he did eventually end up in politics. He was a member of the Whig Party until 1856, and in 1856 he became a Republican. In his spare time, when he wasn't running his errands and working for the state legislature, he studied law to become a lawyer, and that actually happened in 1836. Lincoln's family, so he met Mary Todd in Springfield, Illinois of 1839. She was not his first interest. He actually fell in love with another young lady, proposed to her, and she ended up dying. That caused a lot of depression for Abraham Lincoln. So he was married to Mary Todd in 1842. They had 4 boys, Robert, Edward, William, and Thomas. Not all 4 of those boys lived to adulthood. That also caused a lot of problems in Abraham Lincoln's life. He did not have a happy life, despite the fact that he did experience some political success. So finally, going to Washington. He runs for Congress, was elected to the House of Representatives in 1846. Some of his policies: he opposed the Mexican War. He opposed the idea of slavery. He's going to finish up his term in 1846 and head back to Illinois to practice law. He makes an unsuccessful attempt to run for Senate in 1854. In 1856, he receives his first support for the Republican vice presidential nomination. He vocally opposed the Dred Scott decision during that time. In 1858, he becomes famous in his debates with Stephen Douglas. He lost that election against Stephen Douglas for state senator, but he became famous. He got a lot of attention because of his ability to deliver speeches and his ability to debate. So then in 1860, he beats William Seward to become president. That 1860 election was definitely one of the main causes of the Civil War. The South did not want Abraham Lincoln to be president because of his stance on slavery. So the presidency, he enters this presidency at a really not great time, obviously. It was trouble from the start. Past presidents, and we looked at some of those past presidents, really made a mess. There were a bunch of those presidents that served in that 20-year time period, and none of them were very productive for the United States. Slavery was causing a lot of division between the North and the South. The Southern states threatened to secede and did secede from the Union as soon as Abraham Lincoln became president. So he ends up facing civil war. And in that Civil War, he's not only facing the idea of fighting the Confederacy, but he is looking at enormous pressure, loss of life, battlefield defeats, dealing with generals that were oftentimes incompetent, and multiple assassination threats. So the John Wilkes Booth assassination was not the first threat that Abraham Lincoln had. His major goal throughout the Civil War, and we've talked about this, is to preserve the Union. He wanted to keep the North and the South together. He issues the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st of 1863. This declared freedom for all slaves that were in the Confederate States, not slaves that were in the Union States. And Abraham Lincoln fought for it to be all slaves, but politically, they couldn't free all the slaves. It would have ruined him politically. The North would not have supported that. So finally, and of course during this time the war is going on, and you know there's lots of battles and stress for him. Gettysburg Address happens. That's a big thing. That's a big document we're going to be looking at in class. He's assassinated 5 days after General Lee surrenders. So as soon as he feels like the weight is off of his shoulders from the war, he's assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, who is an actor. This happened in Ford's Theater. And Booth was killed eventually. His co-conspirators were found guilty as well. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories about how this ended up working and who was linked to John Wilkes Booth. But it is, you know, this was one of the probably grimmest days in American history, was this assassination of Abraham Lincoln. So keep all of this in mind, and we're going to be looking at Abraham Lincoln's speeches in a document-based question over the next couple of days. Have a great one.